These are the injectors from the 745i. Took them out, put them in my ultrasonic cleaner here, and I'm kind of going to go over what I did to get them clean, make sure they're tested. I replaced all the little pintle caps here, new seals, new spacers, new filters in there. Unfortunately, I forgot to film it, so right now they're sitting on the back of my Mustang here. But I have some other similar injectors of the same style. They are the factory ones from this car that need to be cleaned. I'm also going to go over cleaning the cold start valve and how I did everything. So join me for that process over by my ultrasonic cleaner. All right, we are over here by the ultrasonic cleaner. These are some of the filters that I pulled out of the BMW injectors. They don't really look bad. They didn't look clean. I did find two of the injectors were stuck, so that probably explains why it was running poorly. Right now I got my little Vevor, however you say it, ultrasonic cleaner set up to, it's at 69 degrees Celsius, which is about 155 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. I got my little OTC electronic fuel injector hooked up to a power supply over here. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear this or not. When I hit it, you can hear some clicking. If I put this thing right next to it, you guys can probably hear that. But basically what I did with this thing was I had it set up, little fuel injector set up, or tester here set up, where I hooked up each of the injectors, ran a couple cycles on them while the ultrasonic cleaner was working. I did pull out this little filter on here. You may have seen on my YouTube short that this cold start valve was covered in some weird gunk. But I'm going to throw them in the cleaner here, run a cycle on them, test them, and then I will show you guys kind of the result after I get them out of there. Got them all set in the basket here, getting ready to put them in. I know some of you may be concerned with dunking these whole things in the water, which technically you're not supposed to do. But I figure these injectors are just getting cleaned up. I don't necessarily need them because the other car has injectors, and this cold start valve is already kind of suspect as it is, so can't hurt it going in the bath, and if it does, then I'll just find a different one. Got this little wonderful buzzing going on here. What I've been doing is, as they sit in there, just hit the button on this tester quite a few times for each injector, and then let them actuate, let them get cleaned out, and once they're done, take them out, dry them off, make sure they're good. Probably not the best to have the end of this in there, but it is what it is. Injectors have been in there for about 5 minutes. You can see it's already made quite a difference on them. It's pulled off some of the paint from these Ford ones. You can see here, I hit this button on here. I don't know if you can hear it, but that's clicking away. So you can hear those things are clicking away up there. And then that mystery goo that was all over this cold start valve is all gone. If you saw in the little YouTube short I had on it, I have no idea what was coating this thing. It was absolutely disgusting and stuck to everything. So I'm going to keep plugging away at these and try to get them all cleaned up, show you the results. All right, these things are just finishing up here. So we got my little tester hooked up to one of the last ones. Now we're going to pull them. So pulled them out of there, cleaned them up quite nicely. It stripped that paint off of there. You can probably still hear them clicking away. So let me grab some of these out of here. The downside is they're piping hot right now. so I will probably burn my hand a little bit almost if I grab them yet. But I usually sprayed a couple some penetrating fluid in them just to let it sit so they didn't rust solid after this. So since this is the cold start valve that I need, I sprayed a little bit of penetrating oil in there. I can actuate it a little bit here with my tester, so that way I know that the oil is deep down in there and it's not going to get stuck on me. I did hold this into there, cleaned out the filter a little bit, but I'll show you on some of these other ones what I had done, kind of a overview of what I did to the BMW ones here. So on the BMW ones, well, this is the Mustang one, but all I had done basically is, pop off this old pintle cap on here with a screwdriver or some pliers or something to get it off there. You got to be careful not to bend the nozzle down in here, or the pintle down in there. But basically just pop this cap off. It is pretty hard to get off there. I can't do it one-handed. Replace the O-rings, replace the spacer with the rebuild kit, and then to pull that filter out, I'll show you guys my little tool that came with my kit here. Basically you just screw this little wood screw into the end, and it's reverse threaded, so if you twist it this way it goes in further. Twist it that way, it's not as deep, and you spin this side to thread the screw into the filter, and then you spin the collar out here and it presses up against that O-ring and pulls the filter out. I'll show you that in a second here. So you just kind of thread that screw in there, and then you would just turn this knob and it presses this collar up against the end of the injector there. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this one-handed. Probably not. So I'll have to pull this out and show you guys what the filter looks like once it's out. So you just twist that little knob a little bit more, and then you can see this filter just pulls out of the end here. Pretty simple process. And then if you go to replace it, these new filters come in the kit. You just kind of press them into the end and then tap them down gently with something. Fuel injectors are pretty easy to rebuild if you got everything at home. But again, these are just some old ones from my Mustang, so I don't need them right now. But as you saw, the BMW ones got rebuilt. And then this cold start valve was the major one that I needed to get out and clean. And then I gotta hook everything up here, and then I'll show you guys how I'm gonna test them all at home by individually actuating each injector on the fuel rail while it's hooked up to the car with something to catch some fuel in there to make sure that they are working good. Continuing with these fuel injectors here, you can see I got them all masked off, ready for painting. Got a little Rust-Oleum satin black here. As always, if you're painting anything, wear your protective clothing, wear a mask, do it in a well-ventilated area. Don't poison yourself. This stuff is nasty. So, enjoy watching me paint something here. Not going for perfect, just going to get them to look better than they used to. So, up next. So this picture you're looking at here, it's hard to see, but it's a picture of the intake valve. Circled in yellow is the broken pintle cap that fell off and got stuck in the intake manifold. And then what you're seeing here is how I had to fish it out. So I used my little borescope and a piece of wire, and after about an hour trying out, I got it stuck on there and got it out successfully. Something else I've been working on when I've been working on these injectors is this auxiliary slide valve, which kind of controls the idle and raises the idle when the car is cold. The way it works is there's a little heating element in here with a bimetallic strip, and there's an air disc in here that opens up when it's cold. The thing looks all wet because I've had it in the freezer all night, but you can kind of see down there that the slide valve is open. Originally this thing was stuck before I cleaned it up and adjusted it. You can adjust it just a little bit with this little nut right here, so you loosen it and you can slide it kind of up this way, and that will help open it up a little bit more. I'm going to see if I can set up a time lapse here and show you guys this thing closing when I got it hooked up to my little power supply down there. I don't know how well that's going to work, but I've also got the injectors here painted, so while I work on testing that air valve, I'm going to put the injectors in the rail and get that thing going too. So this right here is the air slide valve. There's a little time lapse of how it works. I put a flashlight behind it so you can see it better, but I got hooked up to a 12-volt power supply. I'm working on the injectors in the background, but as we're going along, you can see that that little disc in there is moving until it's fully closed. I don't know how long this took. I didn't record the time, but this is a couple minutes, so probably 6, 7, 8 minutes long of how long it took to close that disc. But that's how the slide valve works. And then this right here is just a picture of the shape of the disc on the inside of the slide valve. It's got this little weird cutout, but that's how they all look, and you can see where they close and everything. So during that little time lapse there, you could see that that disc in there closed, opened up a little bit now just because it's cooled off a little bit, so you kind of see through it again. But that's how it's supposed to operate. Heats up here. The bimetallic strip in here bends a little bit and causes this disc to rotate one way or the other, and then it closes off that air gap in there. There's a whole bunch of different types of these. They are, well, different part numbers of these, but they are fairly similar, and they actually go across a wide range of German vehicles at this time. I've seen them in Volkswagens, Porsches, things like that. As you can see, I also put the fuel injectors on the dirty rail here. I cleaned this thing up a little bit too, so this is just a, I guess it's for idle adjustment, so it's kind of a bleed screw. So this threads in and out a little bit, sealed off here. I just put a little Vaseline on this, trying to keep it off of the end of it so it doesn't get gunk on it, but that way it will screw in a little bit better. And on the seal here, so this just drops in there like that, and it's screwed in. Kind of gotta push it to get it started because it's really, really fine thread. But when I first looked at this, it was basically almost all the way closed. So this is basically just a bypass valve that feeds air into this or past it. I can't remember. It's weird how they're hooked up. So this sits on the head like this. There's one hose that comes off of the air inlet into this and goes into a straight hose, which then tees into this, and then they continue on into the intake manifold. So this is just kind of a bypass, I guess, for this thing. And this just allows extra air in there, and then you can adjust your idle speed from this. A couple days later here, but I got my fuel injectors all cleaned up and everything kind of ready to go back in and test. But I'm going to run a quick test here. It's not ideal. It's not really something safe that I would recommend anybody do unless you're willing to take a risk, but don't blame me if you blow yourself up or light anything on fire here. Got my little fuel injector tester here, battery hooked up, keys on. I got the fuel pump relay jumpered. Basically what I'm planning on doing is hooking up each of the individual injectors into this little graduated cylinder here, and then testing them all one by one and seeing what they put out. I've got this set down to 100 pulses for 5 milliseconds each, so I figure if I push the button 2 or 3 times, that'll be 200 or 300 pulses in there, so we should get a pretty similar flow rate on them. I did kind of test them a little bit yesterday. I know the pattern is not ideal on a couple of them, but let's get this all set up on a time lapse here and we'll go through that. So before I do a time lapse, I'm just going to kind of demonstrate what I'm planning on doing here. Figure I'll let you guys watch 1 or 2 of them and see what's going on. But basically, just hit the button a couple times and let it go. I know that gas looks a little bit yellow in there, but it's a mixture of old gas and there was some penetrating oil in the injectors I put in there, so that's 5 pulses right there. Out of that one, got a little over, what was that, 20 milliliters. So I'm going to test the rest of these here and see if they're all at least equal. All I'm doing on this little time lapse here is I'm just showing you that I'm testing each of the individual injectors and they're flowing roughly about the same. They're all within 22 to 24, maybe 25 milliliters, which is fairly close, not perfect, but I was just pushing the button 5 times on that box and testing each one for their flow and everything. So that was all of them there. They'll put out around between, I want to say, 23 to 24 milliliters. Not ideal. They should be a lot closer than that, but I'm not really worried about that right now. One thing I do notice in here is I think that's water in there. Not entirely sure where it came from. We'll focus on there. But that definitely looks like water. This gas is older than I thought. I had drained the tank on this thing and then I put in fresh gas, but I guess I didn't get everything out of there like I thought I had. So I probably drain the tank again. Another thing I might do is just hook up the pump and let it flush the lines clean and pour some fresh gas in there too doing that, because it's not that hard. Pull up a fuel line off the rail there and then it should be able to flush the lines clean. But might as well at least show you guys the cold start valve here too, because this is basically just an injector, just a little bit different shape and different operation. So it works. Not ideal. It's more supposed to open and spray like this. So I know what it does is it just sprays gas in there. Right now I got this set to 1 pulse for every 500 milliseconds. I'm gonna keep going like this for a little bit. Make sure everything's working as good as possible in here. I'll try to talk over the cicadas, which have decided to go crazy and become loud here in the last couple minutes. So I apologize if you hear them in the background and my neighbor mowing their lawn. But one thing to note about these 745i's, which is specific to them, is those yellow injectors you saw in the beginning. Those are from my 1990 Mustang with a 5-liter V8 in them. They're a similar style to this. They're actually all Bosch injectors, so they're pretty much the same style. The yellow top ones from the Mustang are 19 pound an hour injectors. These that are in the 745i are absurdly large. They're about 30 pounds an hour. And of course, they are specific to the 745i. Another thing is here, so down here, this little hole in the intake manifold, that's where your slide valve leads to, and your little bypass valve here. I'm waiting on some parts to get that in, because this was their homemade solution to replacing that special hose that goes between these two and the intake manifold, and that's not going to cut it with me. So I'm waiting on some parts from Lithuania now, so I will get those when I can and get this stuff in. Probably get the injectors in and get the rest of the intake manifold buttoned up and ready to run here. May or may not drain that old fuel, but you saw they're all flowing pretty good. They're flowing pretty equal. These two were originally stuck, so I cleaned them up and they're free now, and they all have a relatively similar pattern, so it should all be good. Now, as usual with YouTube videos, remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later.